Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video, I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite fiction books from 2023. I managed reading a ton of books in 2023 and as a whole the year was awesome for me in terms of reading as well as personally. Now in this video, I'll just talk about the top 10 fiction books and for the top 10 non-fiction books, I'll be publishing another video in just a few more days. I'm publishing the fiction books first because I know you, my viewers, are more interested in my fiction reads compared to my non-fiction reads, and I also tend to read a lot more of fiction than non-fiction. Most of the books that I'm going to talk about in this video are 5-star reads for me, but there are also 1 or 2 4 stars here and there. Despite that, they just stuck to my heart really hard because they either took me by surprise or they delivered me exactly what I was expecting from them. More than anything, these books have stuck to my memory pretty hard because I can vividly picture most of the scenes that happen in all these 10 books. So without any more further ado, let's get into the books right away. At number 10, we have a non-fiction book which I read very recently. I just read this in October or November and it ended up being one of my favorites of this year. I also predicted this to be a favorite while I did my end of the year TBR and end of the year book tag, and the book is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Millers, which is a literary fiction book that happens in the early 2000s. In this book, we follow 2 of our main characters, Cleo, who's in her late 20s, and Frank, who's in his early 40s. They meet on a New Year's Eve and get attracted to each other because of certain reasons. Everything starts snowballing, and even before they know, they get married to each other. What all kinds of problems they face after marrying so soon in their lives and with such a huge age difference is the actual plot of this book. It felt like a perfect adult book to me, so please don't read this if you are under 18 because it has some kind of explicit scenes here and there, but that's not just the point of this book. It explores a ton of stuff and the writing of the author is just so beautiful. Another important thing which I liked about this book is that it is unputdownable. You'll want to know what's going to happen next because even though it's not thrilling in any way, it keeps you hooked and makes you want to flip the pages continuously. Because of all these reasons, I'm sure this deserves to be at the spot in this list, and I'd highly recommend anyone who wants to read it to go forward and give it a try. The next one is a book which actually surprised me so much because I heard only very average ratings and reviews for this book when I picked it up first. But once I started reading the book, I was just pulled into the world that is created by this author in a very light and fluffy way, experimenting on a little bit of dark things here and there. And it is also a YA standalone fantasy, which is Star Daughter by Shweta Thakrar. I ended up loving this book while I got to its end because I think it was not marketed properly for the audience, saying that it is a fantasy that is based on Indian culture and Hindu lore. I think people might have gone into this one with the expectations of high fantasy when it is not that high in its tone. It feels more like an urban fantasy even though most of the story happens in the celestial world in the sky. Here we follow our main character Sheetal, who's actually half star and half human. Sheetal's mother is a star, and after Sheetal was born on Earth, when she was 2 years old or so, her mother had to go back to the celestial kingdom in order to balance certain things inside the world. So Sheetal ends up being grown up with her father alone, and there's this striking quality about her appearance, which is that she has very shiny silver hair because of her star blood. Because of certain things that happen, her father gets injured, and in order to cure him, Sheetal has to go to that sky kingdom and bring pure star blood down to earth so that he can be brought back to normalcy. It is very light in its tone, very fluffy. At the same time, it does not overdo the part of Indian culture that it portrays. It felt very sweet and honest to me, so I ended up loving it so much. So it is at number 9 in this list. The next one is yet another standalone fantasy, but this is an adult fantasy. And I'd want to recommend this to people who like atmospheric and slow moving books more than anything, because there is not like a huge plot for this book, but just the atmosphere of the book and the ways in which the character explores this place where he is living in is the actual plot of it. And it is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Many people might have heard about this book, and I should in the beginning itself say that it is not that much of a plot driven book. It is just about the atmosphere here. If you're someone who likes to just dive into the world of a book and live the story while you're reading it, I'm sure you will love this book. Okay, I read this far back in February, and I think I read this in the first half of the month too, when it was nice and cold here in Chennai. So for that climate, this was just perfect for me. And if you're also in India, you can read this in the first 2 months or so of the year because it will be perfect for that kind of season. when it is not so cold, at the same time not so hot. I cannot say much about the plot of this book as it does not have anything solid in it. But if you like any of the things that I said right now, you should definitely go forward and try it. It's also a very short book, so even though it is slow moving, you can finish it pretty fast. I also have the audiobook of the first book by this author, which is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I'm going to try and buy that book this year and read it along with the audiobook. It is much huger than this one, but if it is anything like this, I'm sure I will love that too. Next we have basically one of the most popular books of this year, and it is also a Goodreads award winner, which just shows how much popular it is. It is also the first book that I've read by this amazing author. I'm sure I'm going to read whatever she puts out after reading this one because I just lost myself while reading this book. And it is Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang, who's one of the most gifted, popular and talented authors of this particular time and age. And here we follow our main character June, who ends up stealing the manuscript of a friend of hers who's very successful in writing. And she publishes the stolen manuscript with some editing under her own name after the death of her friend. It talks about the dark side of publishing and all the plights of being a writer or an author. It is categorized as a literary thriller, and I think it is perfect for it. If you like either literary fiction or thrillers, I'm sure you will love this book. The best thing that I loved about this one more than anything is that I was not able to keep this book aside at all. Okay, I read the first 70 or 60 pages of the book in one sitting, and I read the entire rest of it in just one more sitting, and both of those were done by me during the days in which I was working. So this book was that level of addictive for me. And if you're in a reading slump, or if you like very fast-paced, interesting stories that will pick your brain, you need to try this one. It is also extremely morally grey because the main character whom we follow here is not a good person, but she has her own reasons, which can be acceptable for some people and not acceptable for other people. Nothing she does here is right, but it will keep on testing your moral compass, and that is something which I enjoyed about this book so much. Next, at number 6, we have an adult grimdark fantasy book, and this is also the first book in an adult grimdark fantasy series. It is also by an author whose works that I've enjoyed in the past. The second book for the series is coming out in 2024, so I am super excited for it. And the book is Empire of the Vampire by J. Christoph, which is the first book inside the Empire of the Vampire trilogy. Here we follow a world which is very similar to that of ours, but in a more European way. And basically what has happened is all of humanity is being under the control of vampires because the sun has set 1 or 2 decades back and it has not risen back. Because of this, the vampires have taken over the world, and there is this particular group of people alone who are half human and half vampires that have the power and ability in order to wield the magic to kill the vampires and save the world from this huge darkness it is enveloped by because of the rule of the vampires. If you have heard about J. Christoph's books, or if you have read any of his books before, I'm sure you will know that none of his characters are good people. All of them are morally grey, especially the main characters that he writes are basically bad people in the society, but they have to do certain things in order to save the world and avenge some of the things that have happened in their life. This had the exact same formula, and the amount of creative cussing in this one was just off the charts. If J. Christoph does a course on creative cussing, I'm sure I will do that course because it will just make you laugh out loud, take a minute, pause and enjoy that cussing for how creative and new it is. The world building was excellent in this one, the characters were amazing. The pacing was a bit off here and there because it switched in between timelines, but as a whole it was everything that I expected out of this book, and I'm super pumped to read the second book in this series. Next we have another literary fiction book by an author who surprised me so much, and it is also a translated book from Japanese. I have sung the praise of this book so many times ever since I read it, and I'm sure that I will be reading every other book that this author has written also because I read 2 books by her and both of them I ended up loving so much. I read the first book in January and I picked this book as a result of that one, and it is Breasts and Eggs by Miyako Kawakami, translated from Japanese into English. I think both the author as well as the narrator for this book have done a great job, and I want to applaud them at this point itself. Now Miyako Kawakami has this ability to write scenes which you can actually see in front of your eyes just through those words. They are just the right amount of descriptive. At the same time, they'll put you in the place and make you see in the scene like you're looking at it as a second person or first person in the scene, even though most of the book is written from third person's point of view. Here we follow the story of 2 sisters, of whom the younger sister wants to find a sperm donor in order to have a baby because she does not want to get involved with anyone romantically or sexually because she is not attracted to anyone in that way. And the elder sister wants to get a breast enlargement surgery because she thinks it will make her better because of all the societal pressure that she is facing. It is wonderful in its tone, and I think more than women, men need to read this book, because when we read it, we'll be able to understand a lot more things that women are just going through because of their gender, and what all privileges we just have as a man or a male. It was excellent in every way possible, and I can't wait to read more from this author. At number 4 and 3, we have 2 audiobooks. I don't have the physical copies of these books, and I'm so sad for it because I wanted to buy them, but because of some reason it just kept on slipping away from my mind. So at number 4, we have an Indian book by an Indian author, and it is also a literary fiction kind of contemporary book, which is 100 Little Flames by Preeti Shenoy. Now, Preeti Shenoy has become one of my favorite authors from this year, because I've read like 4 or 5 books by her so far this year, and I've enjoyed each and every one of them, both fiction as well as non-fiction. But this is my most favorite of all the books that I've read by her so far. It is quite big because the audiobook ran for nearly 6 hours in double speed, which means it's nearly 12 hours in length. But I was not bored at any instant at all. Here we follow our main character who loses his job in Pune, and after that he ends up going to his grandfather's house in Kerala and taking care of him, because there's no other caretaker except for one person there. While he goes to that ancestral home in Kerala to his grandfather and gets to know more about his family's history and his grandfather's past, a lot of things start getting a lot more clear to him. It also shows a very toxic kind of parenting style that is done to the main character here by his parents. But most of all, the heartpiece of the story is this friendship or love story that we see between the main character's grandfather and a woman whom he fell in love with when he was in his teens. It is so pure and beautiful that you'll just want to get more of their story. I'm sure I'm going to reread this book sometime in the future, and I'd recommend everyone to just go forward, grab a copy, or just listen to it on Audible, because it is available for free in the Audible Plus catalog if you have an Audible.in account. So not just another favorite book, but also another favorite author. Moving on to the top 3 in the list. At number 3, we have a book which I read way back in January, but it has stuck to my heart so hard. I have recommended it so many times in these past 12 months itself, and it is again another translated Japanese book, which is Sweet Bean Paste by Dorian Sukegawa. It is so excellent that I want to keep on recommending and suggesting this book to each and every person in my life. Even though I've recommended it so many times, I've not seen anyone coming back and telling me that they've read the book and enjoyed it, because this is one story which needs to be read by so many more people. Okay, here also we have 2 main characters, like in 100 Little Flames. We have a younger person as a protagonist, and we have an older person as another protagonist, and we get the story as half and half for both of them. So here we follow our main character who's imprisoned and gets released at the beginning of the book. After getting released, he gets this job to make dorayaki in this particular shop, and when he is working there, an old woman comes and asks for some kind of job to be done there just in order to pass her time, and she's okay with very low wages. When she starts working there, the dorayaki that sells there just skyrockets, and the amount of money that they make there is very high. But there's a small problem here. It is that this old woman who comes and helps in the store had leprosy in her past, because of which her fingers are bent right now. This causes a lot of problems further on in the book, and we get to know about the backstory of this old woman. If you read this book, trust me, the story of the old woman will break your heart, and how our main character here deals with it after getting to know it will crush it to even more tiny pieces. By saying all this stuff, I don't mean that this is a sad book. It has all kinds of emotions. It will make you empathize for every person who is out there and has suffered a lot in their lives. It is easily one of the best books that I've read, not just in 2023, but my whole life. So please, if you've not read it, just go forward and try it. I'm sure you'll not regret the decision. At number 2, we have an adult contemporary romance book, and never in my dreams even have I thought that a romance book would end up being one of my favorite books of the year, and that too in position 2, which is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. While I say Taylor Jenkins Reid itself, it might be sure that the book will be good in some way or the other, but this one was in another level. Okay, it's basically just a love triangle. Here we follow our main character Emma, who was married to this guy who was the love of her life from her high school itself, but he goes missing and dies in a helicopter crash while he's at work. She grieves his death, and after like 1 or 2 years, she gets into another relationship, because it seems like she's getting the same kind of love that she actually lost. And she gets engaged to the man that she's in a relationship with right now. And the night she gets engaged, she gets a phone call, and that phone call is from her ex-husband, whom she presumed to be dead. He's actually alive and gets into Emma's life and gets to know all that has happened in these past 2 to 3 years. Now Emma has to select between the 2 best loves that she has had for her life, hence the title One True Loves. If you want to read a proper mature adult love triangle, you need to try this book because I can easily say this is one of the best love triangles that I've read so far, and each and every character inside the love triangle behave like an actual adult and not childish in any way. Again, another book that I wish I could read for the first time and have all those feelings. I think I read this in just 2 days or so because I was not able to put it down again. It will make you sigh after you finish reading it because it is that good. And at last, now we are at number 1, drumroll please, the best book that I read in 2023, not just fiction, but of all the books that I read in 2023, this is the best book. And it also ended up being one of my book club picks that I did in 2023, and I'll be keeping on doing it in 2024 also. So do look out for my book club announcements in my community tab and my quarterly TBRs, in which I'll be announcing the books for each and every quarter or each and every month. So the book that ended up being my most favorite of all the books that I read in 2023 is The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris, and it is a historical fiction book. It actually talks about a real life person named Lale who became a tattooist in the concentration camp at Auschwitz and what all happened there. It is basically a love story, but it has so much more going on inside it. It is not that big a book, okay? You can read this in like 1 day max, because I think I read this in a time span of 24 hours because again I was not able to put this book down. But if you're going to read this book, please go forward and see all the trigger warnings it has because it has a ton of them. Some of the scenes inside this book, I can't even forget them because they are etched into my brain right now. The writing of the author was awesome. The characters were really incredibly well done. And if you're someone who's feeling hopeless in life, you need to try this book, okay? It is all about perseverance and trying to keep a positive attitude no matter what position life puts you in, because if you keep trying, if you keep persisting on yourself, and if you don't give up on yourself, there is always a chance that things will get better for you, and it might even end up going to such an extent that you might not have imagined your life to be that beautiful. I see this book as a sign of hope and perseverance more than anything, and perseverance is one quality which I admire a lot when it comes to any kind of stuff outside in the world. I am going to read the 2 companion books for this one in 2024, so please do watch out for my channel. And I also have a complete review and discussion video for this book, and if there are videos for any of the other books that I've talked about in this video, all of them will be linked in the description, so please go forward and check them out if you are interested. And if you've not read The Tattooist of Auschwitz yet, you're missing out on a great book. Just go forward, keep your heart safe, keep your emotions intact, and read it. It will be a unique experience that you cannot get from anything else. I just wish nothing that is shown in this book actually happened in the world, because all of it has actually happened to people in the flesh. Other than that, nothing about this book is wrong or bad, and I think many more people need to read this book. So yes guys, those are my top 10 favorite fiction books of 2023. My top 10 favorite non-fiction books of 2023 will be published in just a bit, so please do watch out for that video. And if you got some good recommendations from this one, please do let me know down in the comments what you will be picking up. And don't forget to leave your favorite reads from 2023 also down in the comments, because I'd like to get some good recommendations from you guys as usual. And if you did enjoy watching today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share it to your friends. And if you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.